Now, for more on England's very remarkable draw with Germany at last night, I'm delighted to say we're joined on the line by football writer Jonathan Wilson. Jonathan, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
I'm very interested in your takeaways from the game last night. We've been having a debate here over the last few months about how well prepared this England team are, and you would say 85% of the team is really good and excellent. Their midfield and forwards, whatever the combination is going to be, should be devastating and interesting, but their defence is a little bit creaky. And it appeared as if last night the defence was a little bit creaky again, and John Stones got injured. So, how good a defence do England have at the moment?
Oh, it's a huge problem. I mean, I think this was two obvious problems last night. So one was the goalkeeper, Nick Pope. I think we probably knew Jordan Pickford was first choice, but we definitely know that now, assuming he has recovered from his injury in time. And I think it wasn't just the mistake for the third Germany goal. He looked uncomfortable when the ball was played back to him, which that's a huge strength of Pickford's game. So I think now Pickford is cemented absolutely categorically as number one, assuming he's fit. And then the other issue is the Harry Maguire problem. And England really don't have many options on the left side of that back three. I sort of understand Southgate's desire to be loyal. I think Maguire, apart from the one game against Denmark when he was sent off shortly after all the stuff that went on in Greece and his arrest and everything, I think he's been pretty consistently good for England. I think he scored, is it 8 goals he scored for England? So he's a big threat from set plays, which are a large part of Southgate's game plan. But the first 2 goals were mistakes by him last night. The first one particularly, the second one as well, stemmed from him losing possession and looking. It wasn't just he lost possession; it was that he sort of did this really awkward half turn back. And the problem is you can't see where he's going to play himself into form in the next 6 weeks because he's probably not going to play for Manchester United. So that's a huge issue because there's absolutely no experience to play in that left-sided role in the back three. I guess the two options are Tomori, who wasn't even included in the matchday squad for last night, and Mark Gay, but neither of them have been used in these 2 games. So it looks like Maguire or bust, but yeah, that is a big concern.
There's also no prospect of him changing style and maybe only having 2 centre backs, is there?
Oh, well, I think that's pretty set, and I think it's exactly the same as what he did at the Euros, which is if England expect to dominate possession, so that opening game, the second day of the World Cup when they play Iran, having seen how Iran have played in qualifying, having seen how Carlos Queiroz teams normally play, I'd be amazed if England didn't have 65% possession minimum in that game. I'm pretty sure they'll play a 4-3-3 in that game. But as at the Euros, when they come up against teams where it's more of a battle in midfield, so the Euros, the games against Germany and Italy, and then these Nations League games, the 2 games we just had against Italy and Germany, it'll be a back three. I think that makes complete sense. That if you're not confident in dominating the ball, we'll put in another centre back and make sure you've got the holding player protecting them.
Is there no world in which actually they could try and be the aggressor in that situation and have an extra body in midfield and put the midfielder in instead of the defender in?
I just don't think they've done that. I don't think Southgate's comfortable about that. I mean, he said before the Italy game last week that in the summer, in those games in June, which were disastrous, really, the 2 defeats to Hungary, when they did play with a back four, he said that he compromised on his principles and he wouldn't do that again. And I think every time Southgate has tried to open up, so it actually happened in the qualifiers against Hungary as well, which is probably the worst performance until these last 6 games. Worst performance under Southgate was when he tried to play a 4-3-3 with 2 mobile players on either side of a 3 in midfield. And I think he just feels that, and I agree with him, at international level, and level maybe is the wrong word there, in the international sphere, when you don't have time with the players as you'd have at club level to drill incredibly sophisticated pressing structures and to drill incredibly complex attacking moves, when it comes back to a much more basic game, I think if you open up, then you leave yourself open to the possibility of making a mistake or to one bit of brilliance from your opposition opening you up. And every time Southgate has tried to do that and he's sort of given in to this clamour of, we got this great generation of young attacking players, give them their head. Every time he's done that, it's gone really badly wrong. And I think he feels that it was his him bending to that sort of clamour in the press and the fan base that led to the disaster of the summer. And I'd be amazed if he did that in Qatar, particularly now with no preparation time at all.
Like when you say, Jonathan, that Southgate mightn't like to change his style and his formation, the way he plays football with England, like the five at the back, and a lot of people have kind of said it in recent weeks, is that it doesn't seem to work against the better teams, maybe as well as he'd like it to. Like, is he someone who's against change and changing formation? Is he not open to the possibility of admitting, okay, that was wrong, maybe we can do something else?
Well, I think he has changed. I mean, if you look through the 6 years he's been in charge, he's played with a back three at times, played with a back four at times, and he's now come up with this idea over the last sort of 18 months or so that a back three against better teams, a back four when England expect to dominate the ball. And I think, broadly speaking, that has worked. I mean, there's individual things you can criticise Southgate for. I think particularly the Croatia semi-final, it was obvious England getting stretched in midfield, and he was very slow to react to that. I think you can say in the final of the Euros against Italy, he was slow to respond when the game began to tip against England. But the broader strategic things, I think he's generally got right. And I know there's this sort of idea that this is a great group of players that we can't waste them. They're not that great a group of players. They're a good group of players, but that front three, for instance, is it any better than Brazil's or Argentina's or Germany's or France's? No, it's probably not quite as good as them. So to get to a semi-final and get to a final, we sort of, I don't know, we seem to have stopped giving him credit for that, even though he's achieved in 6 years what England had achieved in the previous 66. England only ever won 14 knockout games at major tournaments, and Southgate's won 5 of them. So I think, look, he's not perfect. There's things you can question, but broadly speaking, his long-term strategic planning has worked.
What do you do at Maguire? Like, do you try and find some other left-sided? Like, is there a world in which one of the left backs actually takes that role? How do you fix that? Because it does seem as if at this particular moment and for this season, maybe Harry Maguire is not going to be the player that he once was.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised that he didn't give either Tomori or Gay a go there last night. I mean, we're already relegated from Nations League. Yeah, if they'd lost, the result didn't matter. What mattered wasn't even the performance. It was working out the answers to a couple of specific questions leading to the World Cup. And 9 of the starters were the same who played against Italy. So I think we can say safely this is his basic setup for games against better teams at the World Cup. So the fact that he wasn't even considering alternatives puzzles me slightly. I guess he's hoping that Maguire plays a bit more. He'll have some Europa League games, I guess. And that he will play himself into a bit of form. Because the other problem is it's not even like a normal World Cup where, you'd have... I think the last World Cup, there were 16 days between the Champions League final and the start of the World Cup. Previous tournaments has been 19, 20, 23 days. And also, you've had all but 2 teams have finished their season long before the Champions League final. It's 7 days this time. So there's no time then to try and put it right, but with training games. So I think that is the real obvious concern. He appears to be going to be loyal, but I mean, I guess that might change over the next month, depending how much he plays and depending how he plays if he does play.
I don't want to double down on Harry Maguire, Jonathan, but I mean, you say there, like, he might get some game time in the Europa League. I almost feel it's at the stage now where he shouldn't be getting game time in the Europa League, even for United. And like, I think Ten Hag potentially would be crazy to put him into a team in the way he's playing. And look, maybe he's just going through a phase at the moment where he's in a really bad place with his football. He can't get anything right. Like, how does this end for Harry Maguire in terms of the World Cup squad? Like, there's no way he's going to be left out, you'd imagine. A lot of people point to his experience within the squad and how good he is in the dressing room, but surely that can only get you so far.
Yeah, I mean, he'll clearly be in the squad. It's whether he's in the 11. And because the other problem with Manchester United is that they play a back four. And that's not going to change. And I think where Maguire's been at his best has been on the left of a back three, where he's got a dominant centre-back playing inside him, directing him. So I was sort of hoping these last 2 games with Eric Dyer, and Eric Dyer talks constantly, that would be enough to sort of at least get him to a base level of competence. But it really hasn't. And I mean, he goes, either Gay or Tomori goes. I mean, the other problem is the player who has played in that role is Tyrone Mings, but he's desperately out of form at the minute. Maybe some suggestions he's slightly coming back the last 2 or 3 games for Villa. But he's not a player who you can say is absolutely hammering down the door saying, pick me again, I'm back. So that I think that issue is the biggest issue. I think there's also issues with the forward line, which I know England scored 3 times last night, but it was after substitutions were made. And Raheem Sterling last night had another one of those games where movement looks great. Every time he can do something without thinking about it, it looks great. As soon as there's time to think, everything gets slowed down. I think that was the big difference between the final 20 minutes last night and, the first 70, and even more so the Italy game. And it's not an entirely fair comparison because Germany push higher, so there's more space for England to attack into. And I think that's going to be maybe the issue that stops Germany going as far as they could do at the World Cup, that obsession with playing the high line. But they look much better when Saka would come on and his direct running. And England have to play a runner alongside Harry Kane because they need somebody who goes beyond him. And you'd sort of looked at the squad before that and thought, well, Sterling's the only one who can do that, maybe Marcus Rashford, but his form and injury situation obviously isn't great. So the front three, if it is Kane, a runner and a schemer, well, it's Foden on Mount, and fine, Foden was okay, but better when Mount came on, but that's a 50-50 call, although Mount hasn't played particularly well so far this season. And then the runner, and it's always been Sterling, and Sterling is probably England's best player, certainly best attacking player at the Euros, but they looked a lot better with Saka last night, and that may be something to look at before that first game against Iran.
At least there's a significant difference in terms of you're going to be able to bring those players on, and you've loads of subs now, so you can start with Foden and bring Mount on, you can start with Mount and bring Foden on, and you would expect whoever isn't starting to be able to watch what's gone on for the first 70 minutes and influence the game like they did last night. With the defensive issue, just to labour the point, like on the right side they're happy to play a full-back converted into the third of those 3 defenders. Is there no world in which one of the left backs could actually play as the left-sided centre-back?
Well, yes, they could. I don't think they'd want to do that with Kyle Walker playing on the right as well. I think to play 2 full-backs in those positions leaves you a bit short of height. So, if Stones is fit and playing well, that is an option. But left-back's actually a bit of a problem. I mean, Luke Shaw, I didn't think he'd make the squad, to be honest. And he played last night and he played really, really well. So but his lack of game time at Manchester United doesn't seem to be an issue. And he probably now, given Chilwell's not playing often, will be the first choice left back. I mean, Reece James certainly can play on the right of the back 3 because he does have that height and that he is a bit more physically imposing than Walker. He can play on the left. Could he play on the left of the 3? Maybe, but I'd like to have seen that tried out first
before you go to the World Cup and do it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd imagine doing that if you had Walker and James as the 2 flanking centre backs.
It's pretty fast.
It's really, really quick, so you can maybe risk playing a bit higher. And then you get Kieran Trippier on the side, and Kieran Trippier was the best taker of a dead ball. And the dead balls, I mean, particularly in Italy, were terrible. And set plays are a big part of Southgate's attacking plans. So, yeah, maybe that is an option. And Southgate seems quite open to the idea of playing right footers on the left. I mean, he's done it with Trippier playing at left wing back. So, yeah, that is a possibility, but it's significantly less ideal than Maguire in form and playing well.
Yeah, and it's very late in the day to be trying that stuff. I want to bring in one comment from one of our regular listeners. Should England not be dominating possession against most teams with the players they have? Foden, Bellingham, Kane, Grealish, Rice, Sterling, etc. They're hardly plucky underdogs. Why do they accept that they won't have the majority of the ball even against the very good teams who are used to keeping the ball?
I don't think it's necessarily accepting that they won't have a majority of the ball. I think it's saying that in certain games it's more of a challenge. So, Germany, Italy, they are very, very good sides. To go into a game against Germany and say, well, we're going to dominate possession here, I mean, that even by England standards, that would be monstrously arrogant. So I think it's just looking at the nature of the opposition. And I think in international football, that's a pretty sensible thing to do because... is there a point where they think they might break even without being arrogant about it? Is there an aspiration to break even, or is there actually what we'll do is our style of play is going to be, to go back to our debate about counter-attacking, essentially counter-attacking? You're going to have the ball, we're going to try and hit you on the break. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying where I think it's going to be contested. So I'd say anything where possession is going to be between 45 and 55%, or 40 and 55%, they play the back three. I just think there's a huge difference, and it's something that Southgate's really sort of teased out, and I think he's right to do it. That I don't know, 3/4, 80% of international games for England, you're playing inside, so you pack 8-9 men behind the ball. You're playing in their half the whole time, and you've got to pick your way through them, and that's a totally different style of football to a more even contest against Germany or in Italy. So yeah, it's not necessarily saying, right, we'll sit back, we'll be happy with 25-30% of the ball, and we'll hit them on the break. It's saying, and if England want to play like that, I don't have a problem with that. They've got a lot of pace in forward areas. Kane is really good at dropping deep, playing on the turn, hitting those passes to at club level to Son, particularly breaking beyond him. If England can work out a way of doing that at international level, brilliant. I don't think there's any sort of humiliation in doing that, but that's not necessarily what I'm saying. I'm saying that games where they think that this is going to be a battle, we've got a scrap for possession in midfield. I think that's when they bring in the extra centre back, and that seems to me a policy that's it's got them to a World Cup semi-final and the final of the Euros. It's got them to within a penalty of winning the Euros. So.
Yeah, fair enough.
Like Jonathan, with the squad being named now in a few weeks, obviously this conversation's going to heat up. But like reading a few of the opinion pieces in the papers this morning, and Trent Alexander-Arnold was a name that came up quite often. A few mentioned the fact that Southgate was one of those UEFA technical observers that last May picked Trent on the Champions League team of the season. And like Gareth has always been someone who's been praised for honing people skills and looking after players in that sense. But are you surprised that Trent not making this squad for last night's game? Are his chances of making the World Cup squad now completely over, do you think?
Well, I don't think they're over, but they're pretty slim, and I think understandably so. And we've seen it this season, and we saw it in the COVID season with Liverpool. That Trent Alexander-Arnold is a brilliant right back in a team that's pressing very, very well, and that allows him to push forward, because when opposition midfielders or defenders win the ball, they have players in their face straight away, and they can't measure that passing behind him. If you think back to the game where Liverpool lost away to Madrid in the COVID season, and the first 2 goals that Madrid scored in that game, both of them were Toni Kroos picking up the ball, 20 yards from the halfway line in his own half, and just popping passes in behind Alexander-Arnold. Alexander-Arnold got hammered for that, but that's always been his position. He needs other players to press quickly when an opposition midfielder gets the ball and stop him playing those passes. And okay, there's a risk that maybe 1 in 50 times, 1 in 100 times, he can measure that pass, but you accept that because of the advantages you have with Alexander-Arnold getting forward and putting crosses in. At international level, there's no way England are going to be able to press as well as Liverpool at their best do. And we've seen even this season how Alexander-Arnold's been exposed defensively because he's not the world's greatest defender, but he never has been. That's not a new thing. It's just that the press hasn't been working well enough to protect that. England's press cannot work that well because they just don't have the time to do it. And in another world where England don't have a fleet of very, very good right backs, then of course he plays and you try and work out a compromise. But when you've got Kyle Walker, Kieran Trippier and Reece James, there's just no need to do that. So is he a brilliant footballer? Yes. Is he, in terms of technical ability, one of the best 10 footballers in England? Probably, yeah. Is he a useful right back for England going into this World Cup? No, I don't think particularly is. And I felt Southgate probably made a mistake by taking him to the Euros, that it just blocked up a spot in the squad with a player he probably wasn't going to use. Now, you could argue, I could see some sense in the argument that if England are a goal behind with 20 minutes to go and they desperately need a goal and you want to put on an attacking right back who's going to deliver brilliant balls in the box, he's a useful asset to have off the bench. That absolutely is an argument. Whether you can find a place in the squad for that, well, that's a slightly different question. But I'd be amazed if he started a live game at the World Cup. I mean, potentially, if England win the first 2 group games, you could see him starting the 3rd group game. But I'd be astonished to see him starting a live game at the World Cup.
Briefly, Jonathan, like we were talking earlier about Stephen Kenny's Republic of Ireland job and how maybe he sometimes makes substitutions a bit late. Watching England last night, it struck me, and you mentioned the fact that they were already relegated from their League of Nations group. Probably an opportunity to use some players in the last game that we know of before the World Cup starts for them in 8 weeks' time. Like, it struck me watching the subs bench last night and seeing Ivan Toney there. Like, Southgate already knows Harry Kane can and will score goals for England. Were you surprised that maybe someone like Tony? I'm almost thinking, why was he brought into the squad at all if he's not going to bring him on in a game against Germany that means nothing essentially at the end of the game?
Yeah, I mean, I guess his answer would be that he's seen him in training and he's looked at what he can do. I would guess there probably was a plan to bring him on last night. Then the way the game went, that having been 2-0 down, England suddenly get back in with a chance of winning it. And you sort of think the morale boost had they clung on to a 3-2 win, although they did exactly the same before Euro 2016, and that went disastrously badly wrong. So coming from 2-0 down to beat Germany 3-2 just before a major tournament isn't necessarily a harbinger of good things. I suspect the game just sort of got away from him, that he wanted to keep Kane on because he wanted to win the game. That had it been 2-0 or 0-0, then maybe we would have seen Tony.
All right, Jonathan, great stuff as ever. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Cheers, thank you.
That's Jonathan Wilson.